everyone. Before we started this episode on Japanese shows in Takarazuka, we just wanted to add a little warning that there will be discussion of suicide as it relates to the shows in this episode. And so if that is something that will trigger you, we recommend that you either avoid the episode or we'll put in a little warning before we start mentioning it specifically, but it does pop up here and there in this episode. Thanks and enjoy the show.
Hello, and welcome to the Takarazuka Fan Podcast, a podcast where Takarazuka fans from all over the world come together to talk and flail about Takarazuka. I am Carly, and Jen and Julie are also here since we didn't discuss who was going to say their name first.
Hi.
Hey, guys. So, as always, let's start off with our happy things. Jen, do you have a happy thing this week?
I do, kind of.
Yay.
I was thinking about this. There wasn't, anything specific that really, made me happy, but there are two kind of general things. One is doing this episode is making me super happy because we have been trying to schedule this episode for about 4 months now, so this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And my other happy thing is just randomly on Twitter, all of these Hoshigumi OG get-together pictures have been popping up lately, which makes me really happy because they all look so cute together.
Hoshigumi has more OG gatherings than any other troupe, or at least they publicize them.
Yes.
Yeah, it's about publicizing them, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw those too, and they also made me really happy.
Matobun was in them too, right? Because she used to be in Hoshigumi.
Yes,
I think I saw her in the pictures.
Well, yeah, there were a lot of OGs who were in Hoshigumi for a little while and then went to other troops. I think Aono Yuki was in some of them too.
Oh.
So yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah.
I'll have to post a link with who we spotted in the pictures so
Nice.
people can see if they can find them.
Yeah, a couple of people blogged about it, so
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
should be easy to find. Julie, what's your happy thing?
So, I love Tennai Mion. She's former Soragumi Saito who retired almost exactly 1 year ago. And she posts on Instagram all the time, and I actually have alerts set up on my phone specifically for Tenchan. And about in the past 48 hours, she posted this video of her with a pudding flan, or a custard, whatever you call it. And she's literally just holding the plate with the custard and jiggling it and going, poop, poop, pudding, poop, poop, pudding. And it's the cutest thing.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh, I just watched it over and over again because it's just stupidly adorable, and I have this tsundere relationship with her where I'm like, you're so cute, I hate you. I love you, I hate you.
Oh man.
It's great. We'll definitely have to link that as well.
That's pretty good.
I want to see those.
Yes.
Definitely.
How about you, Carly?
It's a 3-day weekend in America,
Woo!
Yeah.
and I have nothing to do for the first time in, I genuinely don't remember how long. And I'm going to watch Takarazuka.
Heck yeah.
Yay!
I can't say I haven't watched Takarazuka in a long time because I watched a lot of Takarazuka in Japan, but I haven't had free time and sat down and watched a DVD, I think, since February.
Yeah.
Wow.
I know that feeling.
So it's been a while. Adult life is busy. I don't recommend it.
Stay young forever, yes.
0 out of 10 would not
Please try.
recommend.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm stoked. I'm more stoked than if I had an exciting adventure
Heck
plan. So today's episode is about Nihonmono.
Yay!
Yay. Nihonmono is basically any Japanese style show, traditional Japanese style show, typically, and it can refer to a play or a review. And I'm going to turn it over to Jen to give us a brief history, including some of the periods in Japanese history they tend to cover in Nihonmono and Takarazuka.
Yes. So I wanted to keep this really brief because this is something you can check on Wikipedia if you're really interested in it. But I did want to kind of throw out some terms that we might be using in the episode too. But basically you could separate Japanese history up into a couple of different periods. And there are traditional like period names that I will throw in there too, but even more general than that, you could say like there's kind of prehistoric period. And that would be before written history, so they have a lot of tales, myths of gods and goddesses, that kinds of things. So you get things like Mahoroba or Suzano. And that would be kind of like Kohun or Yayoi period are kind of two of the periods you might hear about, which are like near and dear to my heart because I used to be an archaeology student and I got to do some archaeology in the Yayoi period in Japan. Nice. And that was a pretty cool dig, so.
That's awesome.
I wish there were more shows in that period. I think more recently, what was the Bao Hall that they were doing this year? Was it Hoshigumi?
Whose?
Wait, this year?
Yeah.
Was it Kaichan's Bao with the Warring States period? Sengoku? And it was like... No, it's a different one. Something Hanbei.
Takanaka
yeah.
Hanbei, I think.
No.
So you're thinking of an earlier period because Warring States would have been much later.
This was more classical period, okay. I think.
Hanagumi's Grand Theater was just...
Yeah.
Nope, this is it. Hoshigumi Aterui.
Oh, Aterui. I don't even know what that's about.
Yeah. Oh, that was Drama City, I think.
Yeah, Nippon Seinankan Drama City. Sorry. Okay. So that was kind of the period between prehistoric and classical. That's where there were a lot of like smaller villages, and then they turned into kind of like kingdom kind of ideas, and then those started coming together, and you had two big splits. You had the Yamato in sort of the southern half of the main island, and then is it Anishi? Something like that in the northern half, which were more of a native kind of peoples. So yeah, that kind of thing. So then you get into the classical. That's Asuka period, Nara period, Heian period, which people know more about. And that's sort of from like 538 AD to about 12th century AD. And we get a lot of shows in that time period, specifically Heian. Think about like Genji Monogatari, things like that. Then you hit the medieval period. And the big thing in the medieval period is like Muromachi era or Sengoku, which is the Warring States period that you were talking about. And Warring States or Sengoku Jidai was more of like 1467 to 1603-ish. And this was a time when a lot of the daimyo started fighting against each other for power. And again, all of Japan was not quite consolidated yet. Then, at the end of the Warring States period is when the Tokugawa shogunate started. And that's when all of Japan was sort of under the Tokugawa generals. Yeah. And that was Edo period. It's about 1600 to 1868 was when the Tokugawa shoguns were in charge.
I feel like a lot of shows take place in Edo period.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and this is really interesting because a lot of people don't realize that there was still an emperor of Japan during this period, and there was a whole imperial court. Mm-hmm. But the imperial court was in Kyoto, mm-hmm. and the shogunate was in Edo, which is the old name for Tokyo. And so the power was really actually laying with the shogun and not with the emperor. And this is just kind of interesting to me that they had these two entirely different like systems of government. Mm-hmm. One which is more based on like the Chinese system that they had brought over thousands of years ago and, you know, had evolved into what it was. But the imperial court, like if you see images of it, a lot of the members of the court, the traditional members, wore like the thick paint and the clothes that were made where the legs of the hakama are like so long, you can't run.
Oh,
like
those
you're walking
ones.
on them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? Now this
kind
rings
of
a bell because I have seen something that, like you said, they're wearing those traditional long pants.
Yeah, and the pointy hats that like
Yes.
go up forever. I mean, that's like Heian, but that's kind of the Heian period clothing, but they were kind of preserving
brought it
in
back.
the courts.
That's exactly what I was about to say, is like the Edo period,
Yeah.
they were obsessed with like art and culture really flourished during that time because they weren't warring with each other. So a lot of like playwrights, a lot of different styles of art, like all kinds of art, woodblock painting and dance and songs and like whatever type of art you can think of. There was a lot of experimentation, a lot of innovation in the Japanese arts in the Edo period.
Yes. And then finally, end of the Edo period, there was another war, of course. And this is the end of the Bakufu, the end of the Tokugawa government. They call it the Boshin War, and that was from like 1868, 1869. Suddenly, the imperial court and the Tokugawa were suddenly going at each other, and all of their different supporters, there were all these different factions fighting against each other, and basically this is where it's kind of funny, because suddenly the imperial court, which had been preserving all this like old culture that, you know, trying to be the status quo for so long, suddenly they were adapting Western ideas, and suddenly the imperial court is fighting for like new ideas, opening up to the West, starting kind of bringing back the emperor as the head of the country, and the Tokugawa shogunate is like, no, we're gonna keep things the way they are. And so, of course, in the end, after all that craziness, we've got the Meiji government, and
that's Bakumatsu, right?
Yes.
So, yeah, some people might be familiar with that because that's the era of Rurouni Kenshin.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And also the recent Yukigumi show,
Taiyoden.
Bakumatsu Taiyoden,
Yeah.
of course. Yeah.
And that's when you see, usually at the beginning of the show, everybody's in like traditional Japanese clothing, and by the end of the show, all the men's hair has been chopped off and they're wearing like Western clothes. Sad.
Or like there's this mix.
Tears.
Depending on which side of the argument the person is on, you know, it's like, oh, well, this person's wearing Western clothes, which means they're bad. And, you know, I'm wearing traditional Japanese clothes, and you can tell that I'm the good guy in this story.
But I think out of those time periods, they love to do like Heian period stuff with Genji. They love to do
Sengoku.
Warring States period stuff like Nobunaga and all of that. They love to do the Bakumatsu, which is like Shinsengumi. They love their Shinsengumi. And yeah, we'll be talking about all that.
I agree. Those are like the big ones. And then also you were saying like ancient, like way back in time, Kofun period or whatever, that where it's like fantasy Japanese
mythology.
kind of.
Yeah, and a lot of that fantasy is also like the Warring States period. All those video games.
Yeah,
like,
I was thinking about, you know, hopefully not to derail us too much, but I was thinking of throwing in a question of, well, what are the boundaries of what defines Nihonmono? Because, you know, is Sengoku Basara Nihonmono?
I don't know.
I don't think I would count it, but yeah.
It's like,
I mean, it's the same, like, would you count Epiphany as Nihonmono? Like...
Is Epiphany...
That's an interesting question.
I haven't rewatched it in a really long time.
I mean, it's definitely done in Nihonmono style, but it's also a Shakespeare adaptation. So I don't know if the spirit of Nihonmono is there.
Okay, so I have another question. What about, so I guess it's kind of like Sengoku Basara, Rurouni Kenshin. It seemed like when you guys talked about Rurouni Kenshin before, you maybe disagreed on does it count as a Nihonmono or not.
It's pretty borderline.
See, I count that as like anime manga.
Yeah.
It's not really.
Yeah, sure. The show that Soragumi did with Todoroki in 2008 is about post-war reconstruction. So it's about Japan. It has very Japanese themes, but it's like very much in the modern past 100 years. So is it Nihonmono?
Which one was that?
Reimei no Kaze.
You know what? She's done a lot of that. Like when she was top star, she did I can't remember the Japanese name, but it was In Search of El Dorado, and it was all about like the rise of the big companies during the Meiji period.
Is that what that's about? I didn't even know what that one was about.
Yeah, she was like the guy who started Mitsubishi company.
That's so funny because El Dorado sounds like it's like South American or something.
I think because they did do an El Dorado, which was about South American, but this was In Search of El Dorado, and that's like the official English translation. I think the Japanese was like, if you translated it into English, I would have said like In Search of the Golden Country.
Oh, like I get it. Okay, I get it. Yeah, because I'm thinking of that picture of, what is it, Mommy in El Dorado? I'm like, that's not right. Yeah. Okay,
yeah, that's a different show.
So I think, once we get past Meiji, you don't really count it as Nihonmono anymore. And then, there's stuff like Chateau de la Reine, which is like modern day Japan, so it's not really Nihonmono.
But that's France.
Well, it's in France, but they're Japanese people. Yeah.
See, I remember somebody telling me this once, and I always like throw shows up against this because I think it's funny. They said Takarazuka shows are either, if they're set in Japan, they're set in the past. Or if they're modern, they're set in a foreign country like America or Argentina or something like that. And I was like, every once in a while they'll have a show that like part of it is like modern Japanese, like the prologue or whatever. The people are talking about their grandparents or whatever.
Right, like
Jan.
Yeah.
And the Junjo.
Which, don't even get me started on that because that is like the one thing about Takarazuka shows I hate.
You hate the narrator thing.
But I thought about that. I'm like, that is so true. But then you get a couple shows like, I think Partners was set in Japan, right? Because it's based on a TV show.
Oh, that's right. I love that show. It's so funny. But yeah, you wouldn't really call it Nihonmono.
But those are very few and far between. So,
and speaking of Chateau and Aibo, they're both adaptations of like popular dramas or movies. So it's like Japan trying to popularize on something that everybody loves, this TV show right now. But it's not really the traditional Nihonmono. Yeah.
Yeah, when I think Nihonmono, I usually think like
I said, Meiji or before.
Meiji period or earlier kind of a thing. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, that was my sidebar.
Yeah, same. No, those are great questions.
At some point, I would love to talk about like the other Asian shows that they adapt into, like other Asian history shows, like ancient Korean and ancient Chinese shows, because some of those are my favorite.
I just rewatched.
But that's another episode.
Hoodem, Kalafuturanda, and man, that's like fantasy China, and it's great. Yeah. And Tsukigumi just did it, or is doing it. I don't.
Is doing it. That's their next small theater after All for One just opened in Tokyo, so it must be after that.
Yeah, it's a tour. It's a tour. So, but yeah, we'll have to do another episode. Totally,
on that. Yes.
Yeah, that would be great. Okay, so other than the periods of history they tend to cover, what are some common themes they tend to cover in Nihonmono?
Well, I've talked a lot, so I'm going to let you two throw some out first.
When we were chatting about this before the call, one of the terms that you threw out there was mono no aware, which, I don't know, the impermanence of all things, I guess is the way you would translate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like... And this is kind of funny, us, like, three American girls talking about this. So, take this with, like, a grain of salt, and, like, this is a college education in the liberal arts coming out. But,
right.
I took a couple of literature classes, and it's sort of like, it's the same idea of, like, they love cherry blossoms, right? Cherry blossoms are so beloved because they only last for a very, very short time, like a week or two.
And they're beautiful, and then they're gone.
And then they're gone. So you love it because it's not always going to be there. Does that
That's
make sense?
why Japanese people love the seasons so much, because they're impermanent. You know, they come and then they go. And so, yeah, there's definitely an obsession, I guess you could call it, with the impermanence of things. And it's like, that applies to everything. Someone's life, someone's love, someone's wealth, or whatever it is, your station in life, your health, great. Yeah, all of those things. It's like, oh, it's impermanent. I'm not always going to have this. So a lot of Japanese stories, I would say, are like tragedies, or where they're sort of very indulgently wishing I still had what I used to have, or something like that.
Yeah, and I feel like if you know Genji, Genji Monogatari, Tale of Genji, like, Genji has a million loves that he goes through, and he loves all these women, most of them for a very short time.
But my love is impermanent.
Beauty, their beauty only lasts for a short time.
Right.
You know, it's that same, like all of those women are named after flowers.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Because, well, for many, many reasons.
Flowers are also impermanent, so it's like the same thing.
Yeah. It's just kind of interesting.
Yeah.
That's a good segue into, I think, tragedy in general. I can't think of a happy Nihonmono.
Oh, I can though. Like Kurawanka.
I've got a couple comedies I want to talk about later. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Isn't Namida Bashi Egawa Bashi also a comedy?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's my favorite of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I've seen any of the comedy Nihonmono, so I'm looking forward to that for recommendations for myself even. Okay, so they exist apparently, but
very few and far between.
A lot of them are tragedies, especially like tragic love stories. The romance usually doesn't end well for anybody in Nihonmono, I would say.
Hi all, this is your friendly neighborhood editor checking in to say, if you want to avoid that section we talked about earlier, you probably want to skip ahead about 3 minutes. We'll pick it back up with courtesans.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that because Japan glorifies the impermanence of things and tragic loves and that kind of stuff, a lot of them do end up being lover suicides where one or both of them commit suicide. So it's kind of tough because, you know, suicide is a delicate topic, and you might really like a certain star or a certain troupe, but sometimes it's really hard to watch them play out these stories that are kind of romanticizing and glorifying suicide.
Yeah. I think it also... I lost my train of thought here.
Yeah. We were going to talk about specific shows, and one of the big ones is actually just called Shinju Lover Suicide. Is one that Japan's done or Takarazuka's done several times.
I guess I'm thinking it's not necessarily the death or the depressing themes that is so important. It's that idea in Japanese culture that honor and also the connections between people and groups and how it's about the group and not the individual.
Okay.
I think that has a lot to do with it, right? So, like...
Yeah, definitely.
Especially when you get into the samurai culture and it's more about the military.
Oh, yeah.
You get some of those.
Oh, yeah. Where I'm specifically thinking of a scene from Ryomaden, but there's definitely, like you said, that honor for the group type of thing, and in order to preserve the honor of the group, I need to do military or, you know, honorable suicide of seppuku.
But it's something that I think is a part of Japanese culture in a totally different way than in other parts of the world in general.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to explain.
Yeah, but I'm thinking of in Bakumatsu Taiyoden, there's sort of a parody of Shinju, which is hilarious. It's actually hilarious if you're okay with watching it. But because it's presented in a very comedic way and nobody actually dies.
Well, that's
but
nice.
Before that, Hosho Dai's character is peddling books, and they're all Shinju related titles. So I think it's a theme that
it's almost you know, like Romeo and Juliet's one of the most famous Western love stories being a tragic double suicide. It's definitely a genre. It's a huge genre in Japan.
Yes.
Can we talk about from that? I think that's a good segue into, like, if you think Romeo and Juliet, it's all about, like, the warring families coming together. But I feel like a lot of the tragic love stories are about the indentured courtesans.
A lot.
And that's another big theme that they love. So can I talk about courtesans for a little while?
Do it.
Yes, please do.
So, like, starting in, I want to say, like, 17th century, the government decided that all of the women of pleasure, let's say. So I'm talking about not just like sexual pleasure, but like women who perform, women who are just company for men, that kind of thing. They put them in their own little walled-in cities. And a lot of the women ended up in those areas because their families sold them into indentured service to these pleasure houses. And you're talking about girls who are like between the ages of 7 to 10 ending up in there. And they need to work off the money that they owe, that their family got from the indenture. And a lot of those women never work off the money. You know, they died there either from diseases or pregnancies or just other things. But the main way women could get out is if they could convince someone, a client, to buy out their contract. And a lot of these love stories are, because these walled-in cities, these like pleasure areas, the customers were from every class. So it wasn't just samurai. In fact, samurai weren't really supposed to go there, but it was like the commercial class. People from every class, as long as you had the money, you could go meet with these women. And so a lot of these love stories are these men who aren't rich, but they're in love with one of these courtesans. And so the men go in and they really want to buy out this woman's contract, either to have her as his wife or his concubine. But a lot of these men don't have the money. So the drama of the story is either they steal the money from somewhere or they snatch up the woman and they run off together. And of course, that's not going to end well.
They put their family fortune in danger, you know, and their family. It's that kind of theme we were talking about of like the group. You're endangering the livelihood of your group, your family, because of your desire for this one woman or whatever.
Yes. And so, of course, that's not going to end well.
Usually doesn't.
You've got to have a point to that story.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw Chikamatsu, which I think was Miwachi, Aine Hare, and Midion right before she became top of Soragumi. It was... maybe it's because I saw it live, but it was one of the few that, like, I was like, I'm okay with this. I feel like they presented it in such a way that it was the natural conclusion. What do you call it? Like they built it up in the right way, and it was a little bit meta where they were talking about the themes of lovers. Because I think it's like you were talking about, Jen, where they had like a step back narrator kind of situation where they would talk in a very meta way about writing and romantic themes and that kind of thing. But anyway, I felt like that show presented the lover's suicide in a way that I could deal with it. That's not always the case. It's a difficult topic.
So can I just segue for a minute? Because what we've all said about all these themes sounds super, super depressing. So why would someone really like a Nihonmono?
Okay.
Or why do you really like Nihonmono?
It's, for one thing, obviously, it's very interesting to just see Japanese culture presented in the specific lens of Takarazuka. Because it's their own history, it's going to be near to them in a way that the average Western costume drama is not. And those themes are very quintessentially Japanese culture. So, you're seeing something that's closer to their actual selves, or I'm not sure what you would call it exactly, than a lot of Takarazuka's very, otherworldly. But they're representing their own country, they're representing Japan. And, I mean, just from a looks perspective, I love costumes.
Yes.
Oh, gosh,
like, especially you're talking about those really prehistory fantasy Japan, and then like Heian, Asuka period. Gorgeous costumes. So gorgeous.
Definitely.
I just want to say, because that's really interesting, I wouldn't have thought of it that way, because I feel like when I read a lot of Japanese people's reviews of like Nihonmono, they're like, I couldn't understand the language. It's kind of like us going to see Shakespeare and being like, It's English, but I don't speak this language.
Oh, yeah, because a lot of the time they try to recreate like an accent, a regional dialect, in those Nihonmono. Because in Western shows, they don't really have a reason to try to differentiate between this person's Scottish and this person is English or whatever. It's all the same to them. But when they're talking about a region of Japan and such story takes place in such and such region, a lot of times, they try to recreate that accent Japanese dialect. And like you said, it's really hard even for native Japanese speakers to understand.
Yeah. That's why I thought it was interesting that you said it was closer to them. But that's cool. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
But sort of on that topic, like, I think a lot of it has to do with preserving culture.
Yeah.
Like, preserving tradition. Even if there ever came a time when Nihonmono in general became so unpopular that just nobody was going to see them, I think the company would still be clinging to them desperately because it's just not something that they're willing to let go. I mean, I don't think it'll ever get to that point, but I think just the concept of preserving tradition is so important. And I think probably most of the audience also appreciates that, even if on an individual level, you know, they don't understand this particular Nihonmono or they don't like this particular period of history. And I also personally love very character-driven Nihonmono, more so than like very action-packed or very plot-driven Nihonmono, I think.
Yeah, I think a lot of them are very talky.
Yeah. And that's hard to understand for somebody with intermediate Japanese, like when they are very, very talky. But a lot of them are very moving, tender character portraits, I think. And I like that a lot.
That's interesting. I also want to say, like, I think another reason some of them are so hard for Westerners to follow is some of the shows that are based on characters or events that are so popular in Japan that everybody knows the life of, like, Okita Soji, right? Everybody knows the life of Nobunaga. Everybody knows the life, or everybody knows all the Shinsengumi. So they can do it in, like, little episodes of, like, 10 minutes of this is a big event that happened in this person's life. This is a big thing that everybody knows about. Whereas if you're watching the show and you don't have that background info, like Genji is another big one. It's like a 5,000 page novel. Like,
ridiculously long novel.
Where they just like pick bits and pieces. If you don't know the whole coherent backstory, you could get really lost because you're like, what? There's no like common thread of narration throughout the whole show. And that's not true for all of them.
That's definitely true.
But I think that's true for some of them.
Yeah, where they assume you know something and then they just give you the rest of the story.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So, yeah, it's like we've kind of gotten back to... It's hard to watch Nihonmono sometimes, but
they're so pretty.
On the other hand, you can also learn
beautiful.
things about Japanese history that, like, I was talking about Reime no Kaze, and seeing, like, post-war reconstruction from a Japanese perspective is heartbreaking and really interesting. So, yeah, there's value, even if you're, like you were saying, intermediate level Japanese. Sometimes just watching it will give you enough interest to then go read some Wikipedia articles or something, you know, check out a book about that period of Japanese history and that person. So, yeah, it's really interesting.
Cool.
Yeah, definitely.
Sorry, I took us off the rails there a little bit, Carly.
No, it's valid.
No, are there any other themes that you guys wanted to mention before we move on to actresses?
I think we hit the big ones.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So when we talk about actresses who are known for Nihonmono, we generally think of people who specialize in Japanese dance. So like your ability to act in a Nihonmono, I guess, doesn't really have to do with that specifically, like in terms of Nihonmono plays as much. But there are a lot of actresses throughout Takarazuka history who are particularly known for Japanese dance. And obviously, I think the one that everybody knows the most is Matsumoto Yuri, who is still in Senka now.
Yay!
I think we talked about her a little bit in the Yukigumi episode also.
Yeah.
Can I don't know if I should share too much of this story, but I just want to say Matsumoto Yuri is a complete and total sweetheart. Like, I have a friend who kind of fell in love with her, like, just because she's so elegant and her dancing is amazing. And so this friend wrote her a lot of letters, and they actually ended up, like, keeping in touch and talking and meeting in Japan. And she's just, like, if you see her in the street and you stop her and talk to her, she's, like, very open and engaging. And she's super excited about foreign fans, like, becoming interested and exposed to Japanese culture and Japanese dance. So, yeah, I think she's amazing. She's definitely a sensei. Like, she's, like... when all the other actresses talk about her too, they definitely look up to her. She's a huge influence over Takarazuka.
And on the performance side of that, her, what do you call it? Her control of her own body, her like, and her presence is, I mean, just second to none, basically. She is incredible. Absolutely. Just every slight motion of the hand, every turn of the head is so calculated, and her Japanese dance is just the best.
Yeah. If you have a chance to see her in something, she's not in a lot of shows. She's in Senka right now. But like,
she usually will appear for like one number in a Nihonmono review or something.
Yeah,
yes.
She doesn't typically show up in plays, but I believe she was just in Sekkasho, Hanagumi's Nihonmono review, which was, oh boy, that was last year at this point now, right?
I'm not sure.
Time flies.
Yeah. I think that was like a December, January or something like that. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That sounds right. Yeah, so she'll typically make special appearances and things like that, and she's usually in Buyokai also, which we're going to talk about a little bit later.
Oh, and isn't Matsumoto Sensei on the board of directors?
That sounds right also.
I think so, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I believe Kyo Misa and Ebi Nakaru, also still currently in Senka, are pretty well known for Japanese dance.
Mm-hmm.
In terms, oh boy, if you go back to the stars of old, you get a lot more. Like Kasugano Yachio comes to mind.
Yes.
Are there any others that you guys can think of?
No,
it was
I don't know anyone except Kasugano.
It was a
Kasugano Yachio.
bigger deal back in the day.
Amatsuo Otome, right?
Oh, I've heard that name.
Yeah.
That's way back.
No, she passed away in the 80s, I think. So not
oh, really? I'm mixing her up with somebody else, maybe, or not. She was one of like the first big stars, right? Is that one?
Yeah, so there it seems like there's very few members that stay for life now, but she was one of them. Kasugano Sensei was one of them. They all started in like the teens and 20s and 30s, and
so that is what I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
But I do feel like in that era there was definitely a bigger emphasis on Japanese dance. I mean, certainly before they started introducing Western shows. I know they did Western style reviews pretty early on, but wasn't Oklahoma the first big Western musical? Do I have that right?
I think so.
And that wasn't until the 50s. So there's a good 40 years of Takarazuka history where they were primarily focused on Japanese style shows and, the French style reviews and stuff like that. But almost every production, I guess, would have a Japanese element. Does that sound right?
Yeah, but I would say they also were very focused on fairy tales. So they did a lot of Western fairy tales, like Cinderella and things like that. So
okay, yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah,
but anyway, there was definitely a higher concentration of Nihonmono in earlier eras. So it was, I guess, more of an asset back then to have Japanese dance as one of your specialties. There are still actresses in Takarazuka who list Japanese dance as one of their specialties in Otome. Toma Kazuki is one. She's in Yukigumi. She's 91st class. And Harumi Yu, who's a 96th, and Ran Naoki, who's a 101st, both in Tsukigumi, all list Japanese dance as their specialties. It's kind of sad that they don't get to show it off as much anymore, I guess. But yeah, if you guys know of any other current actresses who specialize in Japanese dance, please leave us a comment.
Yes, we'd love to know.
We would love to know.
I want to follow them. Yes.
Yeah, definitely. So we wanted to talk about TMS a little bit too, and what they study in terms of Japanese dance and, I guess, Nihonmono related skills.
Yeah, I think that has to do with, as you were saying earlier, they're always going to try and preserve it, but it's not as big a part of the culture as it used to be. I know, I remember hearing that in TMS, which is Takarazuka Music School, by the way, they used to do more classes, or they used to have more traditional skills, like flower arrangement, tea ceremony, that kind of thing. But I think now it's just kind of narrowed down. Japanese dance is all that's left. I think Pilates and stuff like that have taken over. It's really interesting though. If you go to the TMS website, and Carly and I just discovered this today, they have an English section now that's like gotten pretty comprehensive, and you can see the curriculum, which is basically their weekly schedule. And they do an hour and a half of Japanese dance Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So that's like 4.5 hours of Japanese dance a week, which is more than I expected, actually. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
You mentioned Pilates. I don't know if I heard this somewhere or if I'm just like drawing conclusions based on what I'm seeing. But if you think about it, over the years, the types of dancing that they do in Takarazuka has definitely gotten more difficult, more aggressive. If you watch any pair dance now and then go watch something from the 80s, it's like, are they even dancing in some cases? And I think that's, maybe in that era, if modern dance was your specialty, you got more aggressive dances, but now it seems like they're really pushing everybody in that direction. So it makes more sense that they would include classes that strengthen you to be able to do that work so that they minimize injuries.
Yes.
And if you're going to add something new, obviously you have to take something away. So maybe that's why some of these classes have been phased out.
Yeah. And I mean, they're not, well, at least they don't claim to be trying to make good wives anymore. So.
Yeah.
Right. That's also a very good point. Yeah. I mean, stuff like tea ceremony, it's not like they were using that on stage even back then, but
can I this might be
go
a
ahead.
point to say, we were talking earlier, I am trying to remember, take this with a huge like mountain of salt, not just a grain of it. My brain, I've forgotten more than I ever learned on Takarazuka, unfortunately, and I seem to recall at some point either reading or someone telling me, and hopefully maybe somebody who listens to this show can correct me or, add something to this. But I remember hearing that at some point, and I want to say it was either just pre-war or post-war, the Takarazuka Review sent out people around Japan to kind of collect regional dances, kind of traditional dances. And I remember hearing there was either a little museum, and I'm not talking about like the Takarazuka Museum. I think this was like somewhere outside of Takarazuka City, somewhere in Hyogo Prefecture, but they actually collected all this knowledge and they started using it when they made their Japanese dance review shows. And when you watch Japanese dance review shows, they always have like shishimai and like oranboshi and all these like regional dances that they like to pull out. And I feel like I remember hearing somewhere that they actually did like a conservation effort to try and preserve these dances, but I don't know. I don't remember where I heard this, so I could be making this up.
I'm sure you're not completely making it up.
Yeah, that sounds really familiar to me, and I hope it's not just like my brain playing tricks on me because you said that, but I feel like I definitely heard that somewhere.
Anyway, if anybody has any more information about this, please let us know, because it's driving me crazy now.
So we mentioned Buyokai a little bit. I guess with the general number of Nihonmono, or not so much Nihonmono plays, but opportunities to show off Japanese dance decreasing compared to years past. We still have Buyokai, it used to be an annual festival of Japanese dance that they do in Takarazuka. It looks like within the last 10 years, it's moved to every 2 years.
Yeah, they changed it right around when I was in Japan, because I saw one of them and then they announced, hey, guess what? We're going to be doing it every 2 years now. And I was like, that means that I can't see another one before I leave, because they spaced it out to every 2 years. That was right around the 50th Buyokai.
Okay.
And that would have been like 2009 or 2010.
Yeah, so there is one in 2017. It's taking place in October, and it's only one day.
Yeah, it's a one-day performance, and it's like 4 hours. Just FYI.
Yeah.
So, you went, right, Julie? I remember
I did.
Somebody else I know who went said the audience was mostly like, I mean, people have this image of older women as the Takarazuka, like, audience, but somebody was like, this was definitely mostly older women, but there were also some men, like older men in the audience.
Yes. And also I think maybe students, maybe either TMS students or just like students in general who come to see Japanese dance. I was rereading my own journal about my notes on the 49th Buyokai. Buyo meaning Japanese dance and kai meaning a festival or celebration. And I definitely, even the Japanese people, it can be very long and like not super exciting dance. A lot of Japanese dance is really like understated and like slow head movements and like, even the Japanese people were like maybe nodding off or getting tired at some points, because it can be a little bit drawn out and difficult to watch. And I'm not gonna lie, if you're sitting in a live performance, like I said, it's like 4 hours, and they like take breaks where they have to reset the stage and stuff. And it's the only time that I can remember seeing men on stage, because they'll have the shamisen players and people playing different traditional Japanese instruments on the stage rather than like in the orchestra pit like they would be usually.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I remember making a comment in my journal about it was the only time I'd seen men on stage.
So it's kind of like No or Kabuki. It's that same kind of traditional...
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Where in No or Kabuki you would have people on like the wings. In a little box kind of playing the instruments. And they put wooden boards on the theater so that they can smack them with their feet and make that very iconic sound when they're doing certain dances. Cool. So yeah, I did see one, and I think they even do like the Buyokai, and then they do a regular performance of whatever show is playing at the Grand Theater at that time as a double... if you wanted to see both, it would be a very long double kangeki day. Yeah, that's what my notes say. I don't know if that's still the case, but it's because it was like on a Friday when there's usually still a Grand Theater performance or of whatever troupe is performing at the time. So yeah, in the one that I saw, you were talking about Ebira Kaoru, Kiyomisa was there, of course Matsumoto Sensei was there. Let's see, Itsumine Aki, has she retired?
No, she's still there.
That's
all
awesome.
Of them are listed for this year also.
Miho Keiko.
Yep, Miho Keiko's there. Todoroki Yu is there, and Kacha's joining this year.
Nice.
Senka crew.
Cool.
Other than Senka, this year, Moon, Snow, and Star Troops are going to be in it, with each of their top pairs and Nibante, and then
that's not always the case with Buyokai. They don't always pull the top stars. A lot of times it's like very unknown or not very popular stars who maybe have an interest in Japanese dance, or we kind of talked about some of them maybe are actually specialists in Japanese dance, but some of them aren't really.
Right. I always thought it was that image where they just kind of pull people who do specialize in it. And I haven't seen any, so I'm not sure how the past ones worked out. But yeah, this year it's all the top pairs, all the Nibantes in those troops, and then the remainder are younger stars or more background stars who I guess have a specialty in Japanese dance.
Really? We gotta update the Takawiki page then, because
we do.
It doesn't have the top stars on it. All right.
I'm looking at the one for 2017 and it lists them.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
It does?
The 2017 Buyokai page has for Moon Troop, Tamakichi and Chappie are there, and Ikigumi, Diamond, and Kichan are there.
Oh, I see. Somebody listed them by their by their years.
Oh yeah, by their class.
Oh, that's confusing.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I'm like, it's Rutan. What are you talking about?
Yeah, it's a confusing order.
Gotcha.
Okay, so I don't want to like get too into these shows right now because we're also going to talk a little bit more in depth about some of our favorite Nihonmono. But just to quickly mention some of the Nihonmono that are most famous in the history of Takarazuka. We already mentioned Shinju, Lover Suicide, which is definitely one of the most iconic ones. They've revived it several times. The most recent one was So Kazuho and Manaka Ayu did it a few years ago.
Are we going to talk about this one a little bit more later, or do we want to do that now? Because there's a lot of cool things to unpack from Shinju.
Yeah, if you want to talk about it, we can talk about it more later, or we can go for it. Hoshikage no Hito is another one that they've done several times. Akane Sasu Murasaki no Hana is another one.
They've done that one like 8 times.
A lot, yeah.
Any others that you guys want to give a shout out to?
Can I just shout out to Ono Takuji sensei, the director of Playwright, because he does a lot of Nihonmono, and I like loved just about every Nihonmono he's done. So shout out to Ono sensei.
Cool.
And specifically, we also wanted to talk about if you're sort of a beginner with Takarazuka, or you've been a Takarazuka fan and don't watch a lot of Nihonmono because your Japanese is not that great, some that are friendly for beginners to get into. I'm gonna jump in and say Susanoo, which was difficult difficult to not talk about as one of my favorite ones, but I'm going to hold myself off because it's been subtitled, so you can watch it and understand it completely. But aside from that, it's also one of my absolute favorite Nihonmono, and it's really fun. It's really interesting stylistically.
Yes.
It's a really interesting take on like the Kojiki stories, the sort of ancient Japanese.
Yes, and I think it's a fun one to watch if you like fairy tales and fantasy and things like that, because it's a story about a hero who's a god who has to save the country from the evil dragon. So like you can't get better than that.
And that's Snow Troop 2004, by the way.
Yes.
Okay, so we're trying to think of ones that are good for beginners.
Yes.
I was going to say Mahoroba.
Yes.
Which is actually a review show, but it's also kind of like Susanoo. It's the gods and goddesses, and I think it's also kind of based on the Kojiki. It's basically the story of the creation myth of Japan. So each of the different dance acts within it is kind of threaded together in a coherent narrative, and it's all about the hero going through the country and, you know, defeating evil demons and having all these adventures and all of these things. So it's fun if you want to hear a little bit about the creation myth of Japan. It's fun because it's got a lot of cool dancing, but it's not traditional Japanese dancing, which is kind of funny because it's a review show, but it's not traditional Japanese dance. But it's got some cool traditional Japanese music. I remember like one scene where they go underwater. They put in some cultural Okinawan music and things like that. When they go when he goes to different places, it's different islands. And I remember reading at the time that the show came out, you know, they talked about how they tried to weave in all this different cultural music and things like that into the story. So it's pretty cool. It's actually a show I've used to pull a lot of people into Takarazuka because it's upbeat. It's not a huge narrative to it, so you don't have to worry about knowing Japanese or not. The costumes and things are fun, and it's short. It's only like 45 to 50 minutes long, so that's also been subtitled, but you don't really need the subtitles to enjoy it. I think you can just enjoy watching the cool costumes and stuff.
There was like a bow workshop type thing that in 2003, I think maybe every troupe did one of 3 one-act shows that were definitely like promoting younger stars, Oi Harukaze-san, Koi Tengu, and Haru Futatabi. And it's 2 one-act shows where one otokuyaku, like young up-and-comer type otokuyaku, would star in one half, and then a different otokuyaku would star in the second half. And I feel like a lot of them are very just simple Japanese stories. Like, I can't remember if it's Haru Futatabi. One of them is just like about a young man reconciling with his estranged mother or something. Like and maybe they're kind of talky, but at the same time, it's Edo period costumes and very simple narrative structure, I think. I can't remember much about Koi Tengu because that's the one that Soragami didn't do. But does anybody else remember those ones?
I did see it. I don't remember. I mean, it's a Tengu, so it's got to be a story about, the imp. But, this is really interesting because I think all three of those, they're shorter shows, and they're from, Carly, when you were mentioning earlier, like, pre-war period, they would do, like, 5 shows that were each, like, really short. Either, like, they'd have a chorus number and a dance number and a short play. And I think all three of those shows are, like, very early Takarazuka. Like, if you go back by year and look at...
Like, they were bringing him back.
Yeah, so I think they did all of those in their early history, too. I'm sure they tweaked it to make it more approachable.
It's funny because I'm looking at the 2003 entire performance lineup, and I'm like, wow, there's a lot of Nihonmono in here. Like, No Kaze no Fue, and... Oh, shoot. There was a Nihonmono review that was, I guess, Rika, Takarazuka Floral Diary.
Oh, yeah.
I
think there are more Nihonmono every year than people realize. I think if you go through the list and look, you're like, oh yeah, there were a lot.
And I was also going to shout out to Sakura, which is a Hoshigumi Nihonmono review from 2007, beautiful. Which I love.
It's gorgeous.
It's gorgeous.
That's the only show I showed my grandma.
Nice. And would you say that one is also kind of a mix of like Japanese style dance, but also a little bit of like updated modern dance?
Yeah, with the mice. The number with the mice always comes to mind.
So silly.
Sort of on that note, pretty much any Nihonmono style review would be great for beginners because you don't really need to follow the plot. We talked about Sekosho, which is beautiful. That was Hanagumi last year. This one's only like 30 minutes long, but Yukigumi did, what is the Japanese title? I think Kaze no Nishikie, which went with Zoro. And Zoro is almost like a full-length 2-act play, so they kind of had this little tiny 30-minute review along with it that actually went on stage first.
That's usually the case. Usually if they're doing a Japanese-style review, they do the Japanese first.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense, because putting on the makeup probably takes more time than taking off the makeup. Yeah, that is like this really weird little sort of comedy sketch review type thing. I guess I don't know how to describe it. It's weird. It's Mizu era. It's very cute. It's fun to watch. It's silly. I think it was sort of at the same time as Aqua 5. So even though it's a Nihonmono style, I think they have this like, they're supposed to be this group of like cool singers or something, and Tonami is in love with Mizu probably, but in like a groupie stalker kind of way.
Only a Nihonmono review. Yeah. I don't remember this part at all. That's funny.
See, I remember being really disappointed in that one. I don't know. That might just be me though.
I think I kind of was too, because I wanted it to be longer and I wanted it to be more serious probably.
Yeah, I was like, there's no traditional dance in this traditional dance review.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very silly. Yeah. It's very, very silly. It's just, it's another review that popped into my mind.
And I think you're right. I think that might be good for people who are newer fans too. It's easier to get the DVDs that are newer. So if you look for things from this year or last year that maybe have a Nihonmono review, plus you'll recognize the actresses, which makes it more fun.
I think you can pretty much guarantee that once a year, some troupe is doing a Nihonmono style review. And like I said, it's generally the format is you do the Nihonmono review first, and like you guys said, then they can like wash up all the makeup during the break, and then they come back and do the play half. That's usually, a Western style show.
Okay. So on to our favorites.
Yay.
How long have we been talking? How long do we have here?
Over an hour?
Less than an hour. So I think we can, maybe we can each talk about 2.
You know what I'm going to do? I don't know. What do you think? I am not going to talk a lot of time about some things, but I want to throw out a lot of different shows.
I kind of agree. Okay, there are things that I can like shout out really briefly, but not go into detail, hopefully.
That works. That totally works too.
Okay.
Jen, you want to kick it off then?
Yeah, let's each do one, and that way we can like
go around.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Jump in. All right. So we were talking comedies earlier, and one of my favorite comedies is Namidabashi Agaobashi, which you could translate as like Bridge of Tears, Bridge of Smiles. It's 2003 Moon Troop, Bao Nippon Seinankan, and it's Tsukifune Sarada and Shirosaki Ai were the two leads. And it is hilarious. I was actually going to rewatch it before we recorded this show, and I forgot. But it is another one of those courtesans. So Shirosaki Ai's character was sold into becoming a prostitute, courtesan. And, of course, Tsukifune Sarada wants to save her. So they decide that they're going to jump off a bridge together and commit suicide. But unfortunately, every time they try to jump off the bridge, something happens to stop them. So this whole
now I
show
remember.
is like a bunch of skits of like different characters coming along with their own problems and their own like dramas.
And Sarada has to keep helping them.
Yes. So like, you know, it's hilarious. Like I mean, even if you don't understand Japanese, like the voices of the characters, the facial expressions they make, and you can pretty much follow along of like, okay, something is going on here that's interrupting them.
Yeah.
It's pretty funny. I can't remember the ending though. Do you remember? Well, we shouldn't give it away anyway.
We shouldn't spoil it anyway.
But I don't think they do not succeed in the end, correct?
I don't
Julie?
think so. It's
yes.
a comedy.
So, I don't
think so.
That's what makes it a really good comedy. I know there are some Nihonmono comedies that I will talk about a little bit later that are not so successful because they do have some serious parts to them and people dying, and I'm like, this is not a good mixture of comedy and tragedy. But this one, from what I recall, is pretty much funny for me.
Yeah, successful would probably like be Junjo, where they try to win a lot of comedy, but it's at its heart, Junjo is a very like tragic story of obsessive love where people make really extreme decisions based on their obsessive love for somebody. But like I said, they try to also have a lot of comedy in it, and I feel like maybe that's a little bit jarring. So it's almost the kind of show where you want to like watch up until the last 20 minutes and then you want to just stop because the rest of it's really horrifying and sad.
Yeah.
First, I wanted to say that before I said I couldn't think of a happy ending Nihonmono, and I realized and I even mentioned Bakumatsu Tayoden, which does have a happy ending. I guess I didn't realize because I was personally crying so much anyway that it didn't register.
It was a retirement show, right?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I am aware of some, but the one I wanted to mention is one of my all-time favorite shows, which is Hoshiai Hitoyo. And probably also the show that I know the most intimately because Kems, who was the guest on the Yukigumi, not the Yukigumi episode, the Chigi Miyu episode, and I translated the script. So that translation is available. I believe we have it linked on the Takawiki. But I was talking before about character portraits and how that style of Nihonmono is really my favorite. And I think the story of Hoshiai is really very simple, but the characters, it's not the greatest troupe show, so it's really good for the top three, Chigi and Miyu and Daimon, but all of their performances in it are so heartbreaking. And it's also, it's pretty easy to follow, I think, even without the translation. But yeah, since there's a translation available, I definitely recommend it. It's one of my favorite shows of all time.
Everyone seems to rave about it.
You and everyone else has talked this up so much. I'm like, one of these days I need to watch it.
It's so good. It was one of those shows where, like, you know, every time Yukigumi's next show is announced, I have to like swallow all of my sadness for not being able to go and see it. And so this announcement came out and I thought like, oh great, a Nihonmono, I don't have to be sad this time. I probably won't want to see it anyway. And it turned out to be, honestly, it's hard to say what my favorite show of all time is, but it's definitely top 5 and definitely a contender for my favorite show of all time. It's just so beautiful and so sad. It's Tokugawa era, I believe, Emma Naoki plays Tokugawa in it, right? Yeah. And so I don't know how much plot should we go into for these? I guess it's not that important to really spoil the whole plot, but yeah, definitely if you haven't seen it already, I recommend it.
Yeah. All right. Man, I couldn't decide which one I wanted to do next. I'm gonna do Yukariko next.
Nice.
Have either of you seen Yukariko?
I actually haven't.
No.
I know about it, but I haven't seen it.
I first saw like a clip of it on like one of those clip shows that they do on Sky Stage.
Like of the classic older one.
Yeah, and I think it was a clip from like one of the 90s ones with Takane Fubuki and some other people in it, maybe. I need to double check. I don't remember. Anyway, so when they announced that Moon Troop was doing it in 2010, I was like super excited, and I went and got to see it live, and it was awesome. But I wanted to mention it because I think not a lot. Some Takarazuka shows are very interesting because it's very meta, wherein they'll have a female character who dresses as a boy or lives the life of a boy. So like Oscar in Rose of Versailles and things like that. And Yukariko has that too. So Yukariko is set in like the medieval period. And Yukariko is a woman who's actually working as a courtesan, but she's not a very successful one. Because she's very much like a tomboy. She doesn't have any like graces or anything like that. But she did learn the martial arts and things because she was raised in a family that didn't have an heir. But then she finds out that actually she was adopted into the family that she was raised in, and actually she's the daughter of a daimyo and has a twin brother. Her twin brother is very, very ill, so his people go and pick her up out of this like pleasure house she's working at and bring her, and they have her dress up as her brother because the area that he rules over as feudal lord is in the middle of all these territorial disputes, so they can't show any weakness, so people can't know that he's sick. So it's all about like Yukariko trying to play her brother, and then you also follow. She plays both characters.
That's what I was about to ask.
Plays the lead. Yeah, they play the brother and Yukariko, and so there's a whole bunch of love stories going on. The love story between Yukariko and Fubuki, who's the guy who actually runs into her at the courtesan house, and like is strangely charmed by this masculine woman. It's really funny. There's actually like so much humor in this play, which you wouldn't expect because it is a tragedy. I won't give away who dies in the end and how they die. But that was the scene that I saw on the show and I like fell in love with, and every time I see it, I love it. But it's interesting because Yukariko is usually played by an otokoyaku.
The lead otokoyaku, like a top star or...
Correct. So like in the 2010 version, it was Kirian. So it was Kirian and Aoki Izumi, another otokoyaku, who played Fubuki. So you get this really interesting bro love going on. But you also get, because the twin brother is there and is gets married to the princess, actually. So that's where things get even weirder because while Yukariko is playing her brother is supposed to be getting married. So Yukariko, like, gets married to this princess, and then there's this weird scene where she's like, I can't, like, consummate this marriage. So I'm trying to remember. I think she asked Fubuki to step in because her brother's too ill to do it. So, like, in a dark room with a mask on, there's like,
dude, that's weird.
It's such a weird play, but it's so cool. I really love it. And I do have a text translation of it up. I can put the link up. I think it's linked off the wiki too. It's a cool play. Sorry, I went on a little bit longer than I expected, but it's cool.
Okay. Well, I'll do a short one, and then maybe I'll rave about the one that I really want to rave about later.
Okay.
Asaki Yume Mishi is one of the iterations of the Tale of Genji that Takarazuka has done, and I'm specifically thinking of the Hanagumi one that they did in 2007, 2008, with
I haven't seen that.
Haruno Sumida, and it can't have been 2008 because Osa retired. So it was Osa, and then Matobun is the weird spirit narrator character. I can't remember the name.
Oh, the time.
Yeah,
time fairy
she's
or
like
something
time.
Like that,
I
yeah.
represent time, and she's always narrating the play, and it's like we were talking about the impermanence of things, where time keeps moving on, and your new love is dead, and it's very visually stunning. The costumes are definitely like Heian, but then kind of like a little bit fantasy. I just Tale of Genji in general is like he's really annoying, and he's really selfish because he just keeps like romancing these women and then dumping them and they die. And so I feel like I have a complicated relationship with Tale of Genji, but a lot of the actresses and the costumes are beautiful, and it's tragic, and they put on some very good performances. And of course, Genji Monogatari is just a quintessential piece of Japanese culture.
I have to admit here that I've never actually made it from beginning to end through Asaki Yume Mishi. There's something about that version that they do of Genji, Asaki Yume Mishi, that I always fall asleep at some point.
Oh, man. All right, Carly, you go.
Okay, my next shout out is Yuki no Jo Henge, which is quite a bit older. That was Ichiro which is one of my favorites for several reasons. One, I think we can also put this in the category of good for beginners because there's a movie that I think you can probably access pretty easily and watch subtitled, so you can understand the plot before going into the Takarazuka version. They're not exactly the same. I saw the movie somewhat recently, like within the last 2 years, and remembered being a little confused by some parts that were different. But you definitely get the overall idea by watching the movie. So Ichiro Maki plays a kabuki onagata, which is multiple levels of gender bending.
Yes.
And she is out for revenge on, I believe in the Takarazuka version, it's only one person. In the movie version, it's 3 people who had a hand in her father's death. And it's all this like elaborate plot to get revenge on this dude. One of the things that stood out to me the most, I think Ichan's era of Yukigumi in general just really killed at Japanese dance, but this Yuki no Jo Henge opens with a scene of her performing kabuki, and I'm really not like well versed in Japanese dance at all. I don't know the significance behind, I don't know what it's supposed to look like. I don't know the significance behind different moves and stuff, but I remember that scene open and Ichan started dancing and I just felt like, oh, that's probably what it's supposed to look like. Like it was
this is
so
real.
beautiful. I mean, her costume was so beautiful. Her movements were so beautiful. And really, the sets were really beautiful too. Like I remember just the color, the way color was used in the sets really caught my attention. So it's a beautiful show to watch just visually, but Ichan's performance is also so good. And Takane Fubuki plays an onayaku in it, and she's like a really sassy character she's kind of this like tomboyish woman, but she is in love with Ichan's character. And that's a really interesting dynamic. And
so wait, do they both play onagata?
No, Takane Fubuki plays a woman, and Ichan is playing an onagata.
Okay, gotcha.
And then I believe a young Todoroki Yu is Takane Fubuki's partner in crime, and they get into some silly shenanigans. It's a really good show. It might be a little more difficult to find nowadays, but also a hearty recommendation.
Nice. All right. I'm sorry, I got another long recommendation, but Yume no Ukihashi, Floating Bridge of Dreams, kind of building on that Genji theme. I don't know how many people realize that The Tale of Genji is actually a multi-generational novel, and like the last third of the novel, one third of the novel is actually about Genji and the characters in Genji's children and grandchildren. And so Yume no Ukihashi was actually based around that part of the Tale of Genji. And I did not expect to fall in love with this show. I remember it was at the time where Ayano Kanami had retired, and they had announced that they weren't going to have another top Musume Yaku star, and we were all like, what the hell? And this show kind of won me over to that format because it gave all of the ranking Musume Yaku plus like a lot of Onayaku in the troupe a chance to get some really cool roles. I don't want to give away too much of it. This is something I've also translated, and I just realized it's been like 10 years since this show came out, and I went online to see it, and they're not selling the DVD anymore, so I think I'm going to actually go ahead and release a subtitled version of it for people so you can access it, because it's beautiful. I fell in love with the music, I fell in love with the costumes, I fell in love with the story, and I don't know if it's easier or harder to follow than Genji, but like,
there's kind of some political stuff. I mean, there's always political stuff in Genji because it's about like court and people, right? Isn't it like brothers or something?
It's one of Genji's sons, but then you need to know the backstory from Genji of like the fact that he's not really the son because he was cuckolded and all this stuff. So it's like, it's very complicated. But this was like the only show that I got so inspired. Like, I finished translating the show while it was still running in Tokyo and I was seeing it.
Wow.
Like, and I was so proud of this translation. I like gave a copy to Masaki, and I'm sure she was like, why do I want this English copy of the script? But I was like so excited to have translated it. And yeah, it's amazing. Totally recommended. Yume no Ukihashi, 2008, 2009, sent in June.
Okay. I also want to talk about a 2009 show, which was Ozora Yuhi and Nono Sumika's first show as top stars in the small theater. It was performed at Hakataza in the summer of 2009. Oeyama Kaden. So it's kind of just means the legend of Oeyama. And it's definitely like Asuka or Heian, like way back when Japan. But it's hard to tell exactly what era it is because most of it has to do with the demon country, where the general idea is there's like a village down, you know, at the base of a mountain or something, and the mountain, Oeyama, is where the demons live. And sometimes the demons come down and they steal young women or whatever, they steal people. And so the show kind of opens with like, oh, a normal average day in our little pleasant town, and then like the demons come and kidnap people. And it has to do with this demon who left the demon country because he didn't like the, you know, violent life of being a demon. And he's a half demon. So Yuhi's character, like the father, had a child with a human woman, and so Yuhi's character is only half demon, and eventually maybe, you know, the other demons made fun of her or whatever, and left the demon country and lived among the humans and met a young woman, and they lived to like as if they were siblings. They lived together for a while. And then eventually Yuhi's dad came back to steal her back up to the demon country. And so it's kind of about that impossible love between a demon and a human. And the costumes are amazing. And I love all the stuff with the demons. Like, there's a really funny, big, like, drinking party scene where all of the demons have these, like, ridiculously oversized sake one that they're drinking out of. Like, they're the size of a large hat, you know. They're drinking as if they're drinking mountains of sake. And they're all, like, harassing these young women that they've kidnapped from the town. And then they try to make them perform for them. And they're like, dance for us, sing for us, or whatever. And the women are really scared and unhappy. And then Aris-chan's character comes in and she's like, what are you doing? Stop harassing those women. And she's like, I'll dance for you instead. And then she does this really awesome dance and with her little subordinates. And then Yuhi comes in and she dances with Aris-chan. And it was a very powerful character for my time as a fan of Hanakage Arisu, because it was a really, really great role for her. And it's a really interesting character for Yuhi because, like I said, she's this half-demon who struggles with, she's supposed to, like, be the successor of the demon country once her demon father, if he dies or whatever, she would have to take over. And so it's this question of, do I continue this legacy, or do I run away from the demon country? And then Meat-chan's character is kind of the Nibante character. Hokusho Kairi's character is like a, you know, general or whatever, some kind of military person who's like, we have to go and rescue all the people who've been kidnapped by demons. And so that's kind of the main arc of the story. And I like the demons. And I like Aris-chan's character a lot. And it's different, you know, it's a different, not just your average Nihonmono. So I think maybe that's also a good gateway if you want to watch something that's like sort of Nihonmono, because I think it's pretty easy to follow.
Yeah, I remember. I have seen that one. I have remembered the drinking party. That stuck with me.
All right, Carly.
Okay. I think my last mention, and I don't want to talk it too much in depth because if I remember correctly, I may have talked about this a little bit in the Yukigumi episode also, but I can't not mention Chushingura because I love it. Also probably fairly friendly for beginners because it's a story of the 47 Ronin, which is easy to look up. And Chushingura itself is also just a very famous fictionalized account of it, which has a ton of different forms in Japanese media. So there's definitely some version you could probably watch or read or even just look up the entire plot on Wikipedia. But this was Mori Keaki's Taidan show. And she was a hell of a samurai. I just think it's a really, really cool show for her. And the pacing of it is really good. Like the way they kind of divide up the story with these really like upbeat songs where some of the younger actresses are kind of like singing narration. So they're like, this is about to happen. And then there's a more talky scene where it happens. So I found it, even like I haven't watched this in a while now, but when I did watch it, my Japanese was not nearly as good as it is now. And I still found it fairly easy to follow because of the way it's paced. But I like the flow of it. And Moriaki is so good, especially the last scene where it's another revenge story. So the last scene where the revenge actually takes place is so cool. She gives me chills in it. Every time.
That was a Hatsubutai too, wasn't it?
It may have been. I don't remember.
I feel like that was either Yuhi's Hatsubutai or somebody had a Hatsubutai. That sounds,
because Mori Keaki would have been around that time, early 90s, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. This was 92 into 93, I think. So it's maybe the wrong season for Hatsubutai. But yeah, it was her last show. So it is that year. It's that same year, but I don't think it was the Hatsubutai that year.
No, I want to watch it.
I wonder what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, it's super good. I highly recommend it.
Okay, I still got a bunch.
I have at least one more.
Okay, I'm gonna do real quick Akane Sasu Murasaki no Hana, which is Love Blooms Out on the Murasaki no, and it's interesting. It's Asuka period, so it's like kind of classical, like about 6th, 7th century AD, and it's based on the real life of 2 emperors of Japan at the time who were brothers. And it's an interesting show because it was first written and performed by Shibata Yukihiro in like 76. And it's been performed like 6 or 7 times since then, I think. And the 2 brothers, like it switches back and forth. Sometimes the top star will play one brother and sometimes they'll play the other brother, like depending on the performance and the year that they do it. So they're pretty equitable roles. And the older brother, who is the emperor, is trying to like, he's suspicious of his younger brother. But they start out together as like best friends and they marry sisters. And then as the sisters grow up, the older brother falls in love with his younger brother's wife. And so he makes his brother divorce her so he can take her as his consort. Yeah, and then he makes his brother, like, marry a bunch of his daughters, which I don't know if that's actually in the play, but if you look at the history, they actually do that. Yeah, so the whole show is kind of about the brothers and all this stuff going on. So it's bizarre, but interesting.
Cool.
Definitely recommended if you like that time period.
I was just going to give a shout out to one that I mentioned earlier, Kurawanka, which is a comedy. It stars Ranju Tomu, and then they did a switch where the second half was Aine Hare. I'm pretty sure I've only watched the Tomu version, but I honestly, I don't remember a lot of it. It's about sort of your average guy in the Edo period who is visited by the god of poverty, this Bimbo Gami, and it's the comedy comes from him being visited by this god of poverty who won't leave his house. And that, like I said, I don't remember a lot of it except that it was really funny, but it's hard to understand because the accent, the regional dialect that they use is a little bit, difficult, but if you simply watched it for, top star watching, Ranju Tomu, Sakura no Ayane, Asaka Manato, and Nozomi Futo were all in it at various times during the run. But like I said, there was a lot of role switching that happened. But yeah, if you want to just watch like Edo period wacky fun times, that's a good one.
I think they talk about that show in Diamond's personal book. Her talk is with Tomu, and I want to say that's where it was that they talked about that show a lot and how difficult the rehearsal was because of all the role switching. Apparently it's like kind of a nightmarish memory, but also a really fun memory because it was a fun show.
Yeah, if you look at the wiki page, which I'm looking at right now, there's like 5 different from these 5 periods of days there were these roles, and then for the next 4 or 5 days there were these roles, and they switched 4 times.
That's crazy.
That's insane.
That's so cool. Let's see.
I can shout out Shinju since I know you wanted to talk about that more.
Yeah,
it's also one of my favorites. We can both talk about it.
Let's do that.
I've only seen So Kazuho's version, but it's so good. It's so good. It has the ending scene is probably it's so iconic. They do it. I know they do it in like TCA specials and stuff like that even more often than they perform Shinju, but it's not only iconic, it's so visually beautiful, and I'm pretty sure it's the same every time they do it. It's so beautiful. And that particular version, there's a song in the middle where So is like going crazy and throwing money all over the place.
Oh God, I love that
where
song.
Her acting is just so like she looks like she's actually going crazy. It's so like it's not like a moving scene, but it like makes you almost uncomfortable to watch it because she's so like crazed and so into it. And of course, like the song the song that plays during the last scene is also iconic and one of the famous songs from Takarazuka history that's always on their anniversary CD collections and stuff like that. But in that particular version, Matsu sings it, and it's crushing.
Yeah.
Absolutely crushing.
I think, did I put that? I think that song might be on our, on the tip. Yeah,
it's on the sampler disc.
Yeah.
There's like you said, one of the specials from early 2000s probably. They were recreating that. And what, Koju Tatsuki maybe sings the song?
Gorgeous voice.
Yeah,
I want to talk about, so that show originally came out in Bao Hall in 1979. Satouchi Miya was in the lead. That I don't think it was the very first Bao Hall show, but it was one of the very first Bao Hall shows. And at the time, they made Bao Hall like the bow of a ship. It was all about like trying new and crazy things that they couldn't do on the big stage. And so one of the things that makes this show so cool and special is it was made in the 70s. It's a Nihonmono, traditional story, the courtesan who needs to escape with her lover. And the music is rock guitar. So if you actually listen to the music, it's electronic, which was huge for the time period, to mix that with this traditional story. It was crazy. And they've redone it like 4 or 5 times since then. And they actually did a really cool version it's been like 10 years now. And they brought back Seto Uchimiya, and a whole lot of the original cast came back and did it, and they pulled in a bunch of Senka members to do this production in Bauhall. So
I remember hearing
I've
about
actually got
this.
the recording, and I had it for years, and I finally sat down and watched it a couple months ago.
I want to see that so bad. I gotta come to your house and just stay there until I've watched all your DVDs.
You're gonna have to hook us up.
But there's very few Takarazuka shows nowadays that I actually have turned the whole show into. Like, I used to rip all the music off of the shows and put it on my iPod or whatever, and that's one of the few that's still on there. Like, I love all the music from that show. It's just cool and weird and special, so...
It's really good.
Yeah.
Cool. I thought of at least one more that I want to mention.
Go ahead.
Okay. Wow Yoka's Grand Theater debut, Boukyo wa Umi o Koete, the English title is Nostalgia Across the Sea. It's really interesting because it's the Odyssey, only Japanese people. So it's like a group of Japanese people. I'm not even sure. Maybe it's like, because Catherine the Great is in it. So whatever century Catherine the Great was alive is what century it takes place in. I'm sorry, I don't remember. But it's like the Kuki clan. So Wao's character is Kuki Umihito. And they're like, I don't know if they're ousted from Japan or like their leader has been killed, and so they are all scattered to the wind, and they decide to leave Japan. So it's like sort of a Nihonmono and sort of not, because they're all these Japanese people who are then strangers in a strange land, where they get in a boat and they end up in Russia. And they show up in Russia and they sort of exchange cultures a little bit with the Russian people. And, like at least one of them, like, falls in love with a Russian woman and kind of wants to stay, but it's very much that pining for your homeland kind of story, where nostalgia, that a feeling of I'm nostalgic for, I want to get back to my home country, which again is the tale of the Odyssey, where it's like all these things keep getting in my way and keeping me from getting back to my country. And Hanafusa Mari, the top Musumeyaku, plays both Kuki Umihito's Japanese love interest and also Catherine the Great, which is really awesome. And so it's like at the beginning of the play, she's like, I'll be still here in Japan pining and waiting for you. And then she's like gone for most of the performance, and then she plays Catherine the Great. And then at the end, Umihito gets back to Japan and meets back up with his love interest, and that's Hanafusa Mari playing the Japanese woman again. Like in the Odyssey, a lot of people die along the way, so it's like, I went on this great adventure, but I lost almost everybody or whatever. So that's a spoiler for that one. But I think it's just a really interesting approach of telling a very different kind of story that's like sort of Nihonmono, but sort of like a mix of cultures, because like I said, they spend a lot of it in Russia.
That's pretty cool.
That was one of the first shows that I saw, actually.
Nice.
Oh, you reminded me that I totally meant to shout out Hanafusa Mari when I was talking about Yuki no Jo, and I forgot, because that was her top star debut, which is crazy.
Wow.
Yeah. You talking about that now and then realizing like how much earlier that her debut was. But
right.
She was so young and fresh, and it worked so well because her character is like this like really super like innocent maiden who I think ends up, dying of a broken heart or something that you can't actually die of. So, like her...
That's totally a thing that happens in Genji Monogatari. People just die of broken hearts.
But, like, her being so young and Ichan being so polished, I remember in that show specifically worked so well for the specific relationship of their two characters.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm out of recommendations, so Jen, if you have more, go ahead.
Oh my gosh, I do. I'm so sorry. So, talking about that one actually reminded me of one that I'd forgotten I wanted to talk about. So the actual first live Takarazuka performance that I ever saw, like not a DVD, but actually live show, was Nagasaki Shigerezaka, Soul of Shiva, which was Star Troop 2005. Kozuki Wataru, Danrei, and Todoroki Yu. And it's an interesting show, and I thought I should talk about it too because Moon Troop, or somebody just redid it. I think it was Moon Troop. And yeah, Todoroki Yu.
Oh yeah, because it's Todoroki Yu again with Tamachi.
Yeah, Todoroki Yu did the same role again, which is so funny because I saw the stage pictures and I was like, she hasn't aged at all in 12 years. Or not 12. Yeah, 12
years.
But it's a really cool show. It's set in, I want to say Edo period. Yeah, Edo period. Back when there were only there was one or maybe two ports that were open to Westerners, and Nagasaki was one of them. And within Nagasaki, there were all these areas where the foreigners had to live, but it wasn't just the European foreigners, it was like the Chinese foreigners too. And so I think the story is actually set within the Chinese quarter, and Todoroki Yu's character is hiding out there from the Japanese law because they're not able to get in there and arrest him, the character. And there's all this cool stuff that happens, and it's actually one of the few shows that Matsumoto Yuri was in where she did her Japanese dance within the show itself and not in a review show. There was a parade, a festival parade that goes through, and she does her dance, which is pretty cool. Highly recommended. Cool costumes, cool story, very interesting take on Asian foreigners within Japan, and an interesting time period. Nagasaki was pretty cool because it was this melting pot at the time where there were very few melting pots within Japan. So I recommend that one. I haven't seen the more recent version, but
I don't think it's out yet. It just happened.
Okay, my other shout out, if we ever stop talking about Nihonmono, hopefully this will get people excited about the fact that there are lots of really interesting Nihonmono. Satomi Hakkenden, I know that all I do is talk about Doragami, but it's really great. It's a Mizubao Hall from 2003, and it's very legendary Japan, where you're not really sure what time period it's set in, but it's this legend of the English translation is Legend of the 8 Dog Samurai, or 8 Dog Warriors, and it's all these people who secretly had the spirit of a warrior, and both female characters and male characters have this awakening where they realize that they're supposed to be part of this legendary team of warriors. And
can we talk about how they became these warriors though, because that is a freaky story.
Okay, you tell the story.
So I was rereading the report I did on this, so I don't remember how accurate this is or not. You could say if I got this wrong, but if I remember from the legend, there was
there's an evil witch queen type person, right?
There was something that happened, something that had to be defeated, and so the feudal lord promised this guy that if he rescued his daughter or did something that. Or no, it wasn't a guy. It was a dog. He promised the dog that if he rescued them, he would give the dog his daughter as his wife. And the dog managed to rescue them. So, the girl had to marry the dog.
So then the dog became a human, right?
I don't even remember if he did. But I think the wife became immaculately conceived a baby. She was so embarrassed about this, she offs herself. And then the spirit of her half-human, half-dog babies are the 8 spirits that were part of a beads on a necklace, and they went flying off and went into these other people. And so that's where these dog spirits came from.
Wow.
So weird.
So it's like you said, I don't know the original Japanese legend, but what I remember is this user of witchcraft, or no, maybe it's a male character actually, who's evil sorcerer and is trying to defeat the 8 dog warriors. And it's just really interesting, like I said, partly because both male and female characters get to be the warriors. So Kazune Mio, Ayahana Chika, and Sakihana An, who are all Soragumi Musumeyaku, get to, or no, I guess Sakihana-an wasn't one of the warriors. I'm looking at the wiki page. But yeah, some of them are ladies, and I think that's cool. And then, I mean, basically it's like, 8 legendary warriors get together to defeat evil. Like, that's the crux of the show. But yeah, it's a different, not your average Nihonmono type thing. It's much more fanciful, but I think it's cool.
I think that was one of the first early shows that I saw, like the first year I was a fan, and I was rereading all my entries today on all the Nihonmono that I reviewed, and I think that was the one where I was like, yes, Sorokumi has a lot of really strong musumeyaku.
Yeah, it was a good showcase for them.
All right, what do I got? I got 2 more.
Okay.
Then I promise I'll cut myself off. So Osaka Samurai. Yeah, because we're talking about these comedies, and this one was actually written to be a comedy, but it was one of those ones that when I originally saw it, I was like, I'm not sure if the comedy and the actual stuff going on really fits. But even with that said, like, it's a comedy Nihonmono, so since we're trying to round up some comedies, I'm putting that out there. It's very interesting because it's set in Osaka in like the Bakufu, the Tokugawa shogunate. And at the time, Osaka was the merchant town. It had the money that kind of kept the government running. So the merchants in Osaka thought pretty highly of themselves. Even though society was so structured that the samurai and the imperials were supposed to be at the top, the merchants in Osaka were kind of like, hey, we've got the money. If you don't have us on your side, you're in a lot of trouble. So they didn't really worry about that. And the story is all about a young man who was a samurai raised in Osaka, but kind of on the poorer side. And it's all about him and like all this stuff that happens to him. And his father really wanted him to go to Edo and help the shogunate. I think this was about the time where things were starting to become unsettled. And he was like, I don't know if I really want to go back to the shogunate. I kind of like my job here, like policing Osaka. And yeah, I think his father dies and he eventually gets suckered into going. And all this stuff happens. But if you want to try out a Nihonmono comedy, that one's on the list.
I remembered one more.
Okay, go for it. Yes.
Ganryu, which I was like, let me think of one that's not Sorokumi. So it's also 2003 Star Troop with Aranke. And then Shiomi Maho also plays like a important characters. It's not a double lead though. Aranke is the lead. Aranke plays the famous Japanese swordsman Sasaki Kojiro, and Shiomi Maho plays the rival swordsman Miyamoto Musashi. And it's very funny because it's Japanese, very famous swordsman story, only the music is tango music.
Oh boy.
It's really weird. A lot of they do these like, intense dance fight type things, or where it's tango music in the background. And I'm for some reason, who is the director on this one? Yeah, Saito Sensei. I'm not surprised. Saito Yoshimasa dreamed up that idea. A lot of it is just about like when you're a wandering swordsman and what do I do with my life, because my I don't have station, I don't have political power, I don't have a family or whatever, and so it's just about these two rival wandering swordsmen. I think it's not meant to be comical, but some of it does seem kind of funny because it's this weird tango music playing in the background. Again, maybe just kind of fun for people spotting, because Hizuki Hana is also in it. It's kind of interesting because she plays a geisha, but she's a foreigner who ended up in Japan and became a geisha, which is she might have been based on a real person. I'm not sure actually, but it's a kind of an interesting role for her. And yeah, I like Toko and Shiomi Maho. I can't remember her nickname. But I just like them a lot. And they have a cool chemistry where they're like rivals, and they have an epic sword battle at the end. And yeah, it's fun.
Cool. All right, my last one. I figure I've got to put this one on the list. Nobunaga, Ryu Masaki's final show.
Nice.
Set during the Warring States period. It's about Oda Nobunaga, who tried to unify Japan and was almost successful. So this particular story is kind of like episodes at the end of his life, but it's a very highly fictionalized account. Some of the stuff that happens, you're like, what? Like, usually we don't give away the ending. I will give away a little bit of the ending. In this story, Oda Nobunaga doesn't die. He, like,
oh my
gets
gosh.
on a ship and sails across the ocean.
It makes me crazy when Takarazuka completely rewrites history like that.
But it's interesting because Masaki, like, they love to give her rock music, like her rock Hamlet. Mm-hmm. So I was, like, super excited when I heard she was going to be doing Nihonmono, and then I heard it was going to be a rock Nihonmono, and I was like, oh, really? Really? You have to do that? So the music is rock
all the way
music,
to the end.
But you know what? I went thinking I was not going to be in love with this show, and it grew on me quite a bit, and I actually ended up really enjoying it. It's got an enormous elephant that Masaki gets to ride.
What?
Like, some of the stage props and things they used were really, really cool. And the elephant, like, every time I saw it, I was like, this is awesome. But
hilarious.
yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on.
Was it a prop or was it multiple people inside an elephant, like the horse in
That's a
the
good
KG?
question.
No, it was a prop, but it had, like, it was supposed to be a live elephant, and so it had handlers, like, moving the elephant around the stage and stuff, which was actually part of a subplot, too. Like, the handlers, like, the elephant wasn't just there. There was, like, stuff going on, which is kind of cool. There's a lot of religious stuff. Like, the Jesuits were really active in that time period, so there's stuff going on there where there's all these subplots with, like, this Italian, Tamaki Ryo's character, who's the villain, is, like, trying to use the religion and his position to, like, get all this stuff happening and overthrow the government and, like, get influence. And yeah, it ended up being very, very interesting because there were, like, flashbacks to things that had happened that Nobunaga did to get to where he was, and things he might have regretted a little bit. It's kind of up to you whether you want to read it as a regret or not. But there were also, like, weird things. Like, I'm trying to remember, there was like a possession happens at one point. Am I remembering that correctly?
Nice.
I don't know. I might be conflating that with something else. It's been a while. But yeah, it was cool. I'm also recommending this one because it's a recent release. It's 2016, so it might be a little easier to get on Blu-ray or DVD if you want to check out a Nihonmono. So, yeah. Watch it for the elephant.
Well, I think we covered a lot.
We did cover a lot. So hopefully people will hear something that sounds like they want to watch it.
Yeah, and I'd love to hear if other people have any recommendations. Please drop us a note.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Please do.
There's so many Nihonmono. I feel like they don't get talked about as much, like, among Western fans.
Definitely not. We just had last weekend, the weekend before, a student from Kyoto who's in the Facebook group came to New York, and we had a little meetup, and she's doing her PhD thesis on overseas Takarazuka fans. So we all answered questions. And one of them was whether we prefer Western shows or Nihonmono, and every single person, including the Japanese people who were there, said Western shows. So,
oh my gosh.
But
I would have been like, Nihonmono.
The thing is that I don't think it's fair to say choose one.
Right, they're so, yeah. The Western shows encompasses so much more than just saying Nihonmono, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, Nihonmono are also awesome, so I hope that if you've been shying away from them, we kind of inspired you to check them out, I guess.
And there are a lot of translations. I mean, let's try and link to as many Nihonmono translations as we can. And then again, if you know anybody who has one, drop it in the notes for people to see. Because I think that's what makes it more accessible.
Yes, definitely. So yeah, leave us a comment, and we will see you next time.
Yay! Many thanks to Michael B. and the Arcanum String Quartet for their wonderful arrangement of Sumire no Hana Sakugoro. And thank you, listeners, for enjoying our podcast.